think you did. The 16th of March, Rabbi Furst, Pierke Avos, Pesach Haggada.
Okay, very good. Thank you again, Rabbi. The first here, as Lou mentioned, here Yeshiva Tzalmanavshi, here in Shalim, here of Zoom. This is our first shir in the morning. We're learning Haggada's Pesach. We're starting now a Baruch Shoimer Havtacha Yisrael. That's the paragraph we're going to begin now. And to highlight this paragraph, I want you to refer to the pasuk in Parshas Bo. That's in Perek Yud Beis, pasuk Mem Beis.
That's in Shmos.
Most, right?
Yud Beis 12. Mem Beis 42.
Right. Right.
You want me to read it?
Yeah, but I'll tell you what. Go back to pasuk Mem. Go back to pasuk Mem.
Okay.
Pasuk Mem is 40, isn't it?
40, yeah. The habitation of the children of Israel during which they dwelled in Egypt was 430 years. It was at the end of 430 years, and it was on this very day that all the legions of Hashem left the land of Egypt. It is a night of keepings for Hashem to take them out of the land of Egypt. That is this night unto Hashem. Guardings for all the children of Israel for their generations.
Right. Okay. So, right. Vel Shmurim, Hula Hashem. It was a night of expectation for Kadosh Baruch Hu. Hashem Lotzisim to take them from Mitzrayim, Eretz Mitzrayim. Ulayla Hazeh, this night was for Hashem. Shmurim was guarded for the sake of all Bnei Yisrael, the Dorosam, for all their generations. Right. So take a look at Rashi here, pasuk Mem Beis.
I haven't got Rashi on my copy here.
No.
It is a night of keeping for Hashem. For the Holy One, blessed is He, was keeping it in mind in looking forward to it, and looking forward to it, in order to fulfill His promise to take them out of the land of Egypt. That this night unto Hashem, that is the night of which He said to Abraham, on this night I am going to redeem your children. Guardings for all the children of Israel for their generations. It is guarded from that time onward against harmful spirits. As it says, He will not permit the destroyer, etc. And that's from Pesachim 109b, and it's referencing another note I can't find. Above verse 23. Oh, I could go back to verse 23.
Verse 23.
Yeah, it's referencing verse 23, saying that
That's right.
where Hashem says, I will skip over.
Right.
I'll pass through to smite Egypt. So it's referring to that over here where it says it's a guarding for the children of Israel. I'm not sure why it's connecting those two.
No, because that was the fulfillment that Hashem was guarding us, right? At that time when the Mashkis, the destroyer, was let loose against the Egyptians.
Oh,
So Hashem
right.
was, right?
Gotcha.
So yeah, very good, very good. So this is the Leil Shmorim. As Rashi says, this is the Hashem was Shomer Umitzapa. He was watching and expecting to fulfill the promise to take the Jews out of Mitzrayim, that the promise he had made to Avram Avinu at the Bris Bein Habesarim. So that corresponds exactly to what we're saying here in the Haggada, right? That's the Shomer, right? Avtachas Yisrael. Hashem is the one who guards his promise, keeps his promise to the Jews. Baruch Hu, blessed is he. Okay, and that also continues on. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Tishev Esakei Lasos, and Kadosh Baruch Hu calculated the end of when there would be a fulfillment of that promise. Right? Kamosh Amar. You can go ahead. Who's reading? Yeah. So continue back with the Haggada now.
Me?
Yeah, unless someone else, unless Mayor or whoever would like to.
Okay, so where are we in the Haggada?
Baruch Shomer Avtachas Yisrael.
Baruch. Okay, so we finished the sons. Just trying to find it here.
Yeah.
Baruch Shomer Habitachaso L'Yisrael Baruch Hu. Blessed is he who keeps his pledge to Israel. Blessed is he. Sheha Kadosh Baruch Hu Chishav Es Ha'etz Ha'ketz Lasos Kama She'amar
Lasos, no, that's Kisha Kadosh Baruch Hu Kisha Esakei Lasos, period. Now it's going to bring a statement which verifies that.
So he calculated of the end of the bondage in order to do.
In order it should be done, what should be done? The fulfillment of the promise. In order la'asos, he was chishav the kates. So Kadosh Baruch Hu calculated the end in order that there should be a fulfillment, la'asos, a fulfillment of the promise that was made to Avram Avinu.
Right. Kama she'amar la'Avram Avinu. Like that which he said to Avram Avinu, Bivris Bein Habitarim, at the covenant of the parts. Shne'amar, as it is stated, Vayomer la'Avram Yadoa Teda He Ger Yiyeh Zaracha Be'eretz Lo Lahem. So he said to Avram, know with certainty that your offspring will be strangers in a land that is not theirs. Vadum ve'inu osam, and they will oppress, and they will serve them, and they will oppress them. Arba me'os shana, 400 years. So we see in the Chumash, it said 430 years. Here it says 400 years. The Gam,
Well, okay, so here, some Arba Meis Shana, right? That's what it said. If you, maybe 1 second, the Rashi is going to help out here. 1 second. And 1 second. Yeah, if you want, take a look. Yeah, this is very important. Rashi here. Go back to your Chumash, right? Go back to your Chumash in the Pasuk Mem. Again, Pasuk Mem, right? If you
right,
remember, Moshe Bnei Yisrael Asher Yashvu in Mitzrayim, the dwelling time that the Jewish Bnei Yisrael were dwelling in Mitzrayim, Shloshim Shana V'Arba Meis Shana, 430 years, right? Right, and
right.
Hayim Kate Shloshim Shana V'Arba Meis Shana Ayu Be'etzem Yom Hazeh. The Yetzu Kol Tzavos Hashem Eretz Yisrael. At the end of the 430 years, that's when the Hashem's hosts were taken out of Mitzrayim. So here it says, right? It says Va'avdum ve'inu sam arba me'es shana, right? So it said that they're going to be enslaved for 400 years. So maybe take a look at the Rashi. Rashi is going to, if you have a question about what's the difference between the 400-year statement that's made here in the Haggada and the 430 statement that's made in the Chumash, take a look at the Rashi there in Pasuk Mem.
Okay, so it says after the other dwellings, which they dwelled in Egypt after the other dwellings, in which they lived as foreigners in a land not theirs, 430 years. This was the sum total of all the years.
That's important. That meaning the 430 years is the sum total of all the years, right?
Right.
The grand total, right?
Right, and I have a footnote that says, when the verse says which they dwelled in Egypt, it means which culminated in their dwelling in Egypt. So it's including the years that led up to the dwelling in Egypt.
Right.
So back to Rashi, from the time Isaac was born to the present time of our verse, there were 400 years. From the time that Abraham had offspring, the decree for your offspring will be a foreigner for 400 years was being fulfilled. Okay, there's a footnote that points us to Bereshit 15:13.
Right.
And there were 30 additional years from the time that the decree at the covenant between the parts was decreed until Isaac was born.
This is where your 30 years comes in. This is the 30-year discrepancy.
Okay, so there was 30 years between the bris ben Abatarim and the birth of Yitzchak. And continuing in Rashi, it is impossible to say that they spent 430 years in the land of Egypt alone. For Kohath, the grandfather of Moshe, was among those that came to Egypt with Yaakov. Go and calculate all his years. Okay, the footnote says Kohath lived 133 years. All the years of Amram.
That's Kahas, by the way. Kahas. That's the
Kahas.
That's the grandfather of Moshe Rabbeinu, Kahas.
Right. In all the years of Amram, his son, footnote says Amram lived 130 years. Back to Rashi, and the 80 years of Moshe, which elapsed before the Exodus, and you will not find them to add up to that much. Besides, you are forced to say that Kohath had lived many years before he descended to Egypt. And many of Amram's years overlapped Kohath's years. And many of Moshe's 80 years overlapped Amram's years. Thus, you will not find 400 years from the time of the coming of the Israelites to Egypt. You must of necessity say at the other periods of settlement of the Israelites before they went to Egypt also are referred to as foreignness in fulfillment of the decree, for your offspring will be a foreigner. Even the time spent by our forefathers in Hebron is considered a foreign sojourn. As it says, it is Hebron where Abraham and Yitzchak sojourned. And it likewise says, with regard to the patriarch's residence in the land of Canaan, the land of their sojournings in which they sojourned. Therefore, you must say that the decree for your offspring will be a foreigner came into effect immediately from the time that Abraham had offspring. And if you count the 400 years from the time Isaac was born, you will find that from the time of the Israelites coming to Egypt until their departure, there were 210 years. This is one of the things that the sages changed for King Ptolemy. I'm not sure I followed that last sentence. It was 210 years from the time that they came to, if you count the 400 years from the time that Isaac was born, you will find that from the time that they entered Egypt, it was 210 years. Okay, I see, I follow. So, but I think I lost the 30 years.
No, so the 30 years is the time from the statement of the promise to Avram Avinu at the bris bein Messiah until Yitzchak was born. Meaning Yitzchak was born when Avram Avinu was 99 years old. So 30 years previous, when he was 69 years old, that's when Hashem made this promise, right? So that gives you the 30 years of when it would start, because again, the shibud would not begin because the shibud would only begin with the offspring of Avram Avinu. So that didn't include his own life. That he did plenty of sojourning in his own life, but the time began when Yitzchak was born, which would be that's 30 years later. So it's 430 years from the time of the bris bein Messiah, but it was the actual sojourning was a total of 400 years. And then the total being in Mitzrayim, that was only 210 years.
So in the Haggada, it says, your offspring will be aliens in a land not their own for 400 years.
Right.
Okay, so Rashi explains that the time that was spent in Eretz Canaan is included because it doesn't say it will be 400 years that they'll be in Egypt. It says there'll be 400 years that they'll be oppressed.
Right.
You could say, well, they were oppressed in Canaan also. That seems like a bit of a stretch, but I can see that you could say that. But what I can't see is in the Chumash, it says the habitation of the children of Israel during which they dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. So clearly, they weren't in Egypt for the first couple of hundred of those years. The 30-year period, there were no children of Israel. There were only Abraham, because it was before even Yitzhak was born. And then the next 190 years, they were in Eretz Canaan, not in Egypt. So I don't get the statement in the Chumash.
So that's what Rashi says. Rashi says, right, in the beginning, it says, Asher Yashu b'Mitzrayim, Achir Shar HaYeshivos Yashvud Gerim be'eretz lo lehem. Acher, meaning after the Shar HaYeshivos that they dwelled as Gerim in land which not theirs.
After the other dwellings, what does that mean?
Those were the dwellings that took place before they actually went down to Mitzrayim.
Right. So it says, Asher Yashvu b'Mitzrayim, which is translated as which they dwelled in Egypt. So it says, the time that the children of Israel dwelled in Egypt was 430 years. So now Rashi says, dwelled in Egypt means after the other dwellings. So that's the 210 years, no?
Well, they went down, they were in Mitzrayim for a total of 210 years.
Right. So I don't see how Rashi helps. Rashi seems to be confirming my problem, which is that it seems to me it should say the time that they dwelled in Egypt was 210 years, not 430 years.
So the statement of the see, if you look at the Haggada for a moment, look at the Haggada.
Yes.
Okay. So it says, Brooke Shomer Shav Tachasu Yisrael Broku, Shakash Baruch Hishev as a Kates Lasos Kama Shenamar. It says, Labram Avinu, Bibris Ben of Saim, Shenamar, Viomer Abraham, Yoide Teda, Kiger Yed Zarech, Be'eretz Lo Lehem. Right? That'll be, right? They'll be in a land that's not theirs. But Abdu Inu Osam, Arbameis Shana. And they'll be subjugated and oppressed there for 400 years. For 400 years. So that's going to be a statement which is referring to the time when the Shibud actually began on the Zera Abraham, on the children of Abraham, which was lasted only for 400 years, right? Because there was a 30-year span between the promise, the beginning of it was 430 years from the promise to the fulfillment, but it's only a 400-year period of the actual Shibud.
Right.
Now, when the pasuk in the Torah is mentioning, right, the Moshe ben Yisrael Asher Yashuv Mitzrayim Shlosha Shanim Ve'Arba Shana, that's not referring to necessarily the Shibud, nor it's not necessarily referring to the promise either. It's referring to the time. Now, when it says that they were in Mitzrayim, so that needs understanding. What does it mean that they were Yeshuv in Mitzrayim, right? Because they weren't in Mitzrayim, even according to Rashi. They weren't in Mitzrayim for the 430 years.
Right.
Yeah, okay, that's what they were saying. So the Ramban on the Chumash there, he has a little bit of a different cheshbon. Shahari Kasam Bushan Ben Ben Shana, Chivi Shana, say that all Chivi Shana, okay. That's just he's dealing with the not 1 second. 1 second. Shin Chaf A. Shin Chaf A. Okay. Because so the Rambam says on this, if I'm not mistaken here, Yeshu b'Mitzrayim ad shloshim shana v'or mimesa shana. Mm-hmm. 1 second. Isha, if you show them the bolos, but then in the hair, it's a little bit. Then that's what he added a little bit. Say so. Let's see. Okay, 1 second. 1 second. Okay, solution shut up. Okay, Shuvah Mitzrayim. 1 second. Most of the Mitzrayim. Okay, according to the Rambam, so the pasuk is telling us like this: Umoshe b'nei Yisrael asher yashvu, right? And the dwelling of the b'nei Yisrael that they were dwelling, right? So in Mitzrayim, right? Shloshim shana or arba me'ah shana, that they're dwelling in amongst all of the situations where they were not in a land of their own, which is considered b'Mitzrayim, right? That was Shloshim Shana Barbas Me'ah Shana. That Yeshu Mitzrayim. Shana Shiyashu Sham Lemolos Sham. Yeah, that Right. The Rambam is learning like this. The pasuk is telling us the following: that Moshe ben Yisrael Asher Yoshev b'Mitzrayim, that sum of time that the Jewish people were in Mitzrayim, were dwelling in Mitzrayim, that brought to a completion of the total time of Shloshim Shana v'Arba Me'ah Shana.
Which begins with the Bris Ben Abitarim.
Right, which with that began to the Bris Ben Abitarim, right?
And what's the unifying factor that connects all those years?
Right. So if you notice, if you have a chumash which has the kudos and the truck, if you notice, there's an asnachta under the word Mitzrayim. Right.
See that?
You're right. You notice that, Mayor, that there's an asnachta under the word Mitzrayim.
Mayor, can you hear?
I hear. Can you hear me? Maybe I'm too far away from my speaker.
we weren't hearing you.
Yeah, we weren't hearing you.
Okay, I'm closer now.
Right. So you see that under the word Mitzrayim, bin Mitzrayim, there's a snachta underneath the word Mitzrayim, right? Between the resh and the yud. Right. So you know that, right, that means you take a pause there of a slight pause, correct?
Correct.
There's a difference. There are really two statements. It's really kind of breaking one pasuk into two statements, right? So it says that there was a dwelling. There's the dwelling of the Bnei Yisrael that was in Mitzrayim, right? And then you make a slight stop over there because it's not to say that the full time of the dwelling of the Jewish people in Mitzrayim was 430 years. Rather, the Jewish people dwelled in Mitzrayim, and that brought to a completion the 430 years.
Uh-huh. Right.
And I think let's go back and look at the Rashi. Go back at the Rashi, the first two short parts of Rashi at the beginning of Pasuk Mem. Right, you have it there. Right, Asher Yeshiva Mitzrayim, that they were dwelling in Mitzrayim. Asher Acher Shar HaYeshivos Sheyoshel Gerim Be'eretz Lolahem. After, meaning this dwelling that they dwelled in Mitzrayim came after all the other previous dwellings that they were dwelling as strangers in lands that were not theirs. Okay. And now what's the Shloshim Shana U'Me'ah Shana Bein HaKol, right? It's a 330 years between all the dwellings that took place, right? From the time of the birth of Yitzchak. And until now, it's 400 years. That'll be 400 years.
I'm not following the darshaning of the Nachta. You're talking about Pasuk Mem, correct?
Right.
Okay, so I see there's an Nachta in the word Mitzrayim, which you say divides the sentence. Okay, I get that. But I mean, there's two halves to the sentence. The first half says they were in the time that they were in Egypt, and the second half says was 430 years. I don't get how it would be different.
That's the point. That it's not referring to 430 years is not the time referring to them in Mitzrayim.
Okay, what is it referring to then?
That's what Rashi says. Rashi says Bein HaKol, amongst all the dwellings. It was 430 amongst all the dwellings.
Oh. Oh. Huh. I see.
right?
I'm gonna put a semicolon after Egypt.
Right, very good. That's the right. We use a asnachta, and it's like a semicolon, right? Exactly.
So the habitation of children of Israel was 430 years, during which they dwelled in Egypt.
Right, which that dwelling in Egypt worked to the culmination of the total time of the journeys, which was 430 years.
So I'm going to put a comma after Israel. The habitation of the children of Israel, comma, during which they dwelled in Egypt, semicolon, was 430 years. So
Right,
now
which
you could
which-
insert the word including the habitation of the children of Israel, comma, including during which they dwelled in Egypt, was 430 years.
yeah, that also is good. That's a good head. That's good. That fits too.
I see. Okay, very interesting.
Yeah.
And that's
Okay.
coming from the Rambam.
Well, through the Ram, I get it. I understand a little bit clearly more what Rashi's saying through the Ramban. The Ramban helps me understand what Rashi was saying in much less words. But
Right. Right.
if you want, we can review this again next week because it's a little because really if you look at the pasuk, it seems to be obviously Rashi's trying to deal with this question because it's obvious that they didn't spend the 430 years in Mitzrayim, right?
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
All
Very
right.
interesting.
Okay, very good. So if you want, we'll pick this up and just review it again tomorrow to make sure it's clear because it's a little bit a delicate point. So we should try and reinforce it as a Hashem. Someone might ask you a question about this somewhere along the line. So
Yeah. Yeah. So basically what we said is that the 400 years is because even though part of those we were in Canaan, we were not under our own rulership. We were still foreigners. We were foreigners in Canaan. And then we were foreigners in Egypt. And the focus here is when we were foreigners.
right.
But when we talk about the 430 years, we're talking about, I guess it's the seminal event is the covenant. That's when the promise was made.
Right. That's what the Haggada was saying. The Haggada said it was what the Haggada was telling us, right? That the Haftacha, right? That the Haftacha was that they would be, right? In the 400, they were Abdu V'inu some Arba Meishon. They were pressed, subservient and oppressed for 400 years. Right. So that's from actually the time of the birth of Yitzchak. Okay, that's from the time of the birth of Yitzchak. Right.
Right.
And the promise actually took place 30 years previously to that. That would be 430 years. So that's what Rashi also goes into details to try and explain the difference between the 400 years and the 430 years.
Right.
Okay. Like I said, we'll go over it again next time, Gleanetta, so we can get that a little bit more clear.
Okay. Thank you, Rabbi.
Very good. Okay, so we'll stop now. Roy, you should have a good afternoon, Mitzvah Shem. Tomorrow's Erev Shabbos. If you want, we'll say something about the Parshas Shavua, and we'll continue soon in the Halacha Shir, Mitzvah Shem.
I'm sorry I had to leave. but I'm
All
back
right.
again to say goodbye.
Okay, thank
All
you.
right.
Farewell.
Okay.